Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we're joined by a very special guest. He is a transformational coach. He is Mr. Polish Peter Kolat. How you doing today, Peter?
Great, Ryan, man. Thanks for having me on the podcast, man. I love the name of the podcast, Through the Fire. So, which might be a really cool conversation to have.
Yeah, I know from our pre-interview that what we were talking about earlier about God and everything. It's like, yeah, we could probably really have a really good conversation about being led through the fire.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, if you've been on this earth, I think past maybe, 7, 8 years old, there has probably been some fire that you had to, walk through. So, I think that's a really good conversation to help people, go through their own fire. So, I love the podcast name and I'm looking forward to see how I can contribute.
Yeah, awesome. So the number one question the audience is probably wondering, who is Peter Kolat?
Well, so I was born in Poland, a communist country back in Poland. Came here when I was 14 years old. No English, not just a suitcase, in my name. And in fact, I remember thinking back in the day when I was learning English, am I Polish or am I Polish? Right? Because the word is exactly the same. So, but that, leads me to a story of how I ended up doing what I'm doing is that through the entire, life, felt like there was something bigger than I needed to do and help other people because all of the different fires for your podcast here that I went through, whether it was when I was a little kid, whether it was when I was a teenager or when I was in my 20s or 30s. In 2011 I ended up getting divorced, and that was a big fire after that kind of a thing. And through that, obviously, I went to discovery of my own self to figure out, I had this unanswered question back in the day. Then I kept asking myself, what the hell is wrong with me? And because all those different things were just basically seems like was crashing around me. So through that time, on that self-discovery kind of a journey, I came to find out, a lot about myself. And through that, a lot of people kept telling me that I should probably help other people and coach other people. So in 2000, I want to say 14, 15, I started coaching, and I help entrepreneurs and business owners get back to their authenticity, their true selves, to be able to go and actually rock out in life and business. Because I think if you can't figure out life, business is not going to work very well, and vice versa, because you can't separate those two things. Because guess what? You're the common denominator. So, Polish Peter is, the person who's obviously here to help people. And actual Polish Peter came out of one of the students that was helping. I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy named Tony Robbins,
Yeah.
whether you're a fan of him or not. The guy is pretty popular, and he called me a Polish Tony. I'm like, I'm not Tony, so I ended up being with a Polish Peter. So, but that's where I'm at. That's who I am. I got 3 kids. I live in Michigan, and I'm happily married now. Love my wife, and life is great. And I have a business that basically runs for the most part on its own. I work about 15, 20 hours a week and able to live my life. So that's it.
Nice. That's nice. What did living in communist Poland kind of teach you?
Well, that's a really great question. Well, I think what it taught me growing up is the scarcity thing, which I think it actually helped me not be so scarcity oriented person, if that makes any sense. When I was growing up as a kid, I saw my mom work 2 jobs. My dad was an alcoholic, so he was barely ever home. So she was doing most of the work. And we used to get these, I actually have it on my phone, these little coupons that they would give us. And there was like rations. Like one little tiny coupon was for a butter for, let's say, a couple 100 grams. Another coupon was for bread. Another coupon was for, flour or milk or whatever it might be. And that had to last a certain period of time. And then they would send that to us again, sort of like food stamps in a way, but it was very like rationed to like based on what it was allowed. And we lived in like this 14 by 14 room in like a hotel. That was our living room, our bedroom, our kitchenette off to the side, and the bathrooms were down the hallway that everybody on the floor would use. So what that taught me was that we're a scarcity based mindset, and I didn't like it. In fact, when I was coming here, I remember being on a plane and sitting on a plane, and they had 2 movies playing. And the first movie was um, Coming to America. I don't know if you ever heard of that movie.
Yeah,
I think
really good
I
movie.
don't think this was by an accident, by the way. They put that movie on that plane. Was Eddie Murphy, and the second one was by an Eddie Murphy as well, and was called Beverly Hills Cop, the one where he is in Hollywood, right?
Yeah,
So I'm sitting on the plane, 14-year-old kid, and I'm thinking, you know what? This might not be so bad. This is America, because one, there are some beautiful skyscrapers, right? Beautiful cars, palm trees, right? Skies, beautiful weather, all kinds of stuff, beautiful women. I'm a 14-year-old kid, and then I end up in Detroit. And, I was like, where are the palm trees? Where are the, all those different things. But, you know, so what ended up happening is as I was learning through here, I was envisioning this as a kid that, here money grows on trees. And I literally, like being a little kid, I thought that there was a tree in here in the United States that you could literally walk up and pull money from. Obviously, there isn't one, but what that taught me is that there is opportunities, right? And if you look at the big stark difference between the communist back then, by the way, Poland is no longer communist. This was they abolished it in about 89. I could go on for 15 minutes just talking about that because I was a kid back then. To now, this Republican, republic democracy kind of a thing here in the United States, where it's, you can start your own business, you can do all kinds of different things. So there's two big, distinct kinds of doing business, And what it taught me is that those money trees do exist in the United States because you do have the opportunities. You can literally go and start a business, start an LLC in your state, probably take you half an hour to create a name, submit it, get it registered, and you got your business. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to it, but back then when I was back in Poland, that wasn't possible. So those two big differences taught me that one, there is an abundance of stuff, and two, that there are choices, that we have choices in life. Because I was able to go and look from that perspective when I get here. Does that make sense, Ryan?
yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
How drastic of a change was it going from the communist system to the more capitalist system, and especially from Poland to Detroit, Michigan?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one was the language, obviously, because I don't speak it, right? But the other thing was when I got here, I ended up in Detroit. I remember thinking, like, how am I ever going to like get around the city? Because in the city, I don't know if you ever been in this area. I used to live actually in a small city that's inside Detroit. It's called Hamtramck. It was like a big Polish community there. Every single house looks exactly the same. So I was like, how the heck am I going to find my house if I go out there, in a street and walk my way backwards, right? But the differences were obviously, like I explained, with the scarcity versus the abundance kind of a thing. The other big difference is the language. I had to learn it. I had to ask a lot more questions. I had, ESL classes, so I had to learn that language. Culture was a big difference, right? Because it was a lot more. I lived in like a small little village later on in my life back in Poland with my aunt, my uncle. So it was a very kind of like a small little community, whereas here it's like a huge city, right? You're like this one piece of this huge, bigger puzzle. So there was a lot of big differences, but the more I started, living here and acclimating to the country, I mean, this is my home now, and I love it. And what I get to do here in the world, it's pretty amazing. It's incredible. So I'm glad that I was able to come here and what the country provided me, and I want to keep, doing and helping other people.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty drastic change. I mean, what you went through and what you were able to overcome to become a transformational coach.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what helps me because of the fact that if you think about it this way, and I tell this to my students all the time, you literally have no control over anything. If you think about it, you don't have control about anything in life. And when you finally start looking from that perspective, because it's hard for a lot of people, and I had to learn it myself, because think about it this way, when it's all those different things that happened to me when I was a kid and when I came here, The way I ended up coming to United States was my mom, who was already living here. She came here to make some money. She went back to Poland, and about 2 weeks before she was supposed to come here, she says, "Guess what, kids? You're coming to the United States with me." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." And she's like, "Yeah, you are." I'm like, "No, I'm not." "Yeah, you are." And I'm next thing I'm on the plane, right? So so I've learned pretty early is that there is no control, that we don't have a lot of control over things. Think about it. How much control do you have over your life, or what happens around life, or your health, or anything like that? And this can seem disempowering to people, but when you embrace it, it can have a very empowering effect on you to help you live life a lot more powerfully. Because then, well, guess what? If I don't have control over anything, then one, from my perspective, we talked about before the podcast, is, I give my, grace and to God, and what He's been able to help me and do for me in my life. So that helps me because there is a bigger plan to this kind of a situation. And then the other aspect happens when I don't have control over things. I don't get upset about so many different things. I don't get stressed about so many different things. When somebody cuts me off on the road, I don't get upset about it, right? Because of the fact that I don't have control over it. And everybody has got their own story of what they got going on. And now it changes how I actually go and interact with life, and that helped me grow my business, help me do so many different things in life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you stated that perfectly. It wasn't until I learned that I wasn't in control of my own life that things got a lot better, because I
Mm,
was trying to hang on to the steering wheel, trying to control everything, and like and watch myself driving over the edge.
yeah, I hear you,
What's it?
man. Yeah. Think about it this way. It's like when it comes to kids, I don't know if you have kids, but the
No.
listeners, if you have kids, try to control your kids. See how that works out for you. You know, I mean, when they're younger, it's a lot easier, but when they get older, it's a little different conversation, right? So there's so many different examples, and a lot of it has to do with what's going on between the 2 years, how you start looking at life, your view of
Yeah.
life.
I said the only thing you can really control is your effort and your attitude, how you approach everything.
Yep, how you respond to life and things like that. Yeah.
What types of services do you provide then as a transformational coach?
Well, so like I said, I work with people to help them not only in business but life. So most clients, they come in with to work with me. They're business owners, entrepreneurs, and I want them to help them grow their business. And so we have them create, like, do you have a vision for your business? And some of them do. And then I'll ask them, do you have a vision for your life? And they'll look at me like weird kind of a look, and it's like, what do you mean vision for my life? I'm like, well, do you know what you want your life to look like? I'm like, yeah. Well, then show me where it's written. He goes, well, I know it in my head. I'm like, well, tell me about it. So he tells me about it, or she tells me about it. And then maybe a month later, ask him the same question. It's a different story. So one of the first things that I have him do is actually sit down and write a vision for their life, what they want their life to look like. And this is a really huge lesson that I had to learn from myself. I learned this from a company called Life on Air. In fact, actually, not only from them, but from I don't know if you ever read Rich Dad Poor Dad, not Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Shit.
Think and Grow Rich?
Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow, right?
Yep. Yeah, I
And
read that.
he mentions that in there. But this, when I went through this vision writing process and started actually looking, what do I want my life to look like? My relationships, my, with my kids, with my wife, my, personal health, spiritual health, all kinds of different areas of my life, and actually put it on piece of paper, on like a one-page document, in the present tense, like I am living that right now kind of way, and in a positive, not a negative way. So for instance, I wouldn't write down, I don't want to be overweight. I would write down, I am fit and healthy in my life, something along those lines. You know what I mean? Or I have a great relationship with my wife, such that when we are, together, it feels like, I don't know, heaven, whatever we want to call it. But start writing the vision for your life, and this is a really important aspect, and most people don't do it. That was a big, like an aha moment for me. So once you have that vision, then you ask yourself, well, in order for me to live that vision, whether it's travel, whether it's maybe some kind of a car or a house or family or whatever it might be. How much do I need to be making in order to live that life? So then you come up with some kind of a number. Then you ask yourself the question, in order for me to live that life, right? And I actually put it on calendar, those pieces, like maybe I have my morning routine, or I have my gym time, or spending time with my wife, or dinner with my wife, or going on dates with my kids, or whatever it might be. You put that stuff in the calendar, and that's the only thing you put on that calendar. That life vision stuff, which you have left over on that calendar, is blank spots that are left over for what? The money making activities, the business side. And you end up with, let's say, 15, 20 hours of that. So now you have, how much does this business need to be making me? And how many hours a week do I work in the business to support the life? And then the question is, how do I actually design that business to support that life that I wrote on that vision? And that is a big aha moment that happens for people, because now I end up designing that business in order to work 15, 20 hours as opposed to working 80, 90 hours like I used to back in the day. Hope that makes sense, because, and the listeners, because that aha moment, when you shift that thinking, all of a sudden you start to design your life and business in a completely different way. So that's what I do with them. I work with their businesses and their life, whether it's health, whether it's, you know, personal relationships, spiritual, and a lot of times end up working on them specifically as a person. And by doing that, the business transforms itself
Yeah.
because
I
they're the
don't
leader.
think I don't think too many people understand that, like, your spiritual life and like your like personal development part in your own personal life plays a huge role in your work life and like in your business.
Yeah, huge. And I'll give you an example, because I think people might be able to relate to this. So when I was growing up, and a lot of times it happens, however you are up here matters. Obviously, that's what you're talking about, the personal development stuff. When I was growing up, I felt like I never could say anything, like I didn't have a voice. So in order to make sure that people would like me, and very early when I was 8 years old, I made the decision for myself that I'm going to make sure that people like me. So over time, I became this quote unquote people pleaser. I don't know if you ever met a people pleaser, but
Yeah.
I was a huge people pleaser. I don't know if I said huge in the biggest way, but I was huge people pleaser. Okay. And I would say yes to everyone and everything. Now, to a point, it worked in certain relationships until it didn't. And when it comes to business, it did not work as well. Why? Because that people pleaser that drove that business ended up saying yes to everyone and everything, because he didn't want to upset clients. He didn't want to, I would say, yes, yes, I can do this job. And when they would say, let's say I used to back in the day in 2007, 8, design websites for companies. And that was my first, business that I had. And I would be designing a website for, let's say, $1,500. Somebody would come and say, listen, I can do 1,500, but would you do it for 500? I'm like, yes. And I would say unlimited revisions, and yes, because I want them to be happy. Yes, 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 yes. And guess what happens through that? You start to falter. You don't deliver on time, right? Because you have all these yeses that you said yes to, and you start to maybe avoid people because you don't want them to be angry, and you don't answer on time, or you don't deliver on time. And what ends up happening is that people pleaser that supposedly had nothing to do with business is actually affecting the business. And the crazy thing for me is I did not know that people pleaser until I was like 35 years old. It was like running back here like a blind spot. And most of us have those kinds of ways of living kind of subconsciously that we don't actually see until someone points it out to us and goes like, when I was 35, say, dude, you're a people pleaser. I'm like, what? No way. I'm like, well, look what you're saying. And then I was like, almost like a mirror right in front of me. I was like, wow, you know what? I am a people pleaser. And that's when I finally started deciding to say no. When I started deciding to say no, guess what? My business started growing, because if I was being more authentic, right? And when I couldn't do it, or this wasn't the right client, or Think about for business owners. Sometimes you have a client who's a pain, what client. The people pleaser would never say no. This guy now was able to say no and fire the worst clients and be able to focus on the really good clients, and that changes the business. It's just one aspect of it.
Yeah. How are you able to overcome that then?
Well, what the people pleaser thing?
Yeah.
Well, the one way is, think about it this way: people pleasers make it all about themselves. And I say this, we do events around the country, and one of the things I say at the events, and that gets people very upset. And if someone is on this call listening, if they're a people pleaser, what I'm about to say might get you upset. But I will say this: people pleasers are one of the most selfish people in the world. Why would I say that? Well, if you really think about it, when I say yes to everyone, everything, why am I doing it? I'm doing it in order to make someone happy, right? And to make sure they don't get mad at me or whatever it might be, that they're, making me say how great I am or whatever it might be. It's meeting some kind of a need for me. So now, when you look at that, you start asking yourself, what am I getting out of this? Well, by me saying yes, what I was getting out of it is like, I was the guy, you know what I mean? I was the person who would come and save the world, kind of a thing, for this particular person, whoever that might be. So what I was getting out of it was very like feeling good about myself for a short period of time, because then obviously I couldn't deliver on time, that I feel bad about it. But for that period of time, I was getting something out of this, making me feel good. So that's where that quote unquote selfish came in. So the way I overcame that is when I stopped making it about myself and I started making it about them. How can I support them? And being very clear what those boundaries are in order for me to be able to support those people, then I was starting to be able to say no. The other aspect was that when me saying no, it didn't mean anything bad about me. Before, it meant something bad about me. Now, when I start looking from saying no to someone, it only means that there is this idea that they're asking me to help them with, and I can say no because it's just an idea. You know what I mean? The other
Yeah.
aspect is, I want you to consider. So I'll give you another example. So about a few years ago, one of my really good friends, I know this guy from about 2007, came to me and he's starting a new company, like national company. And he's telling me how great it is and how awesome it's going to be. And we're going to grow it and we're going to make a lot of money and all kinds of different things. And the people pleaser in me started saying, you know what? Yeah, that'll be good. I think I would love that. You know what I mean? And so before I answered yes, I said, listen, let me get back to you, and I'll let you know in a couple of days. So I went back home and I pulled out that vision. Remember, I was talking about the vision
Yeah.
earlier? And I pulled out the vision. I looked at that vision, what that vision says. I asked that question: does this proposition, what he's offering, this opportunity, align with my vision? And one of the things I asked him is, how many hours a week am I going to have to put into this? And he says, well, at the beginning, about 15, 20 hours. And I'm like, okay, so looking at this vision, can I fit those 20 hours in there? And if I can't, what's going to go out first? Well, what's going to go out first for me is my me time, my morning time, probably. What's going to go out is gym time. What's going to go out is maybe a couple of dinners here and there, missed with the family or whatever, or nights, working nights, and then I'm cranky the next morning or whatever it might be. But something's going to come out of that vision.
Yeah.
So then
Hey,
I
can you
went to the
pause a
guy.
second?
Yeah.
Can you pause a second? Okay.
Yeah. So, like I said, looking at that vision, I had to take something out of that vision. So when I went back to my buddy, I said, listen, dude, I would love to do this business with you. And I wasn't lying about that. I would love to do that. But guess what? My vision doesn't allow me to do it. And he says, what are you talking about? So then I explained to him what that vision thing is. And guess what? He agreed with me. He's like, yeah, I get you, man. I hear you. And for me, the people pleaser, guess what? I wasn't the bad guy anymore because I blamed it on my vision. And that's how I end up to like letting go of this whole people pleaser thing, because I just blame it on my vision. Which, guess who wrote it? Me.
I like that. You say personal development is BS. What do you mean by that?
Well, not so much BS, but I will tell you this: there is a lot of thing misunderstanding how that's done. So I'll give you an example. For years, there's been in the personal development space. It keeps talking about um, mindset. You need to change your mindset, change your mindset, change your mindset. Right? Mindset is like the word that's been used so many different things. Now, one thing I do know is the language that we use in our lives is very important. And the reason why I know that is because think about it, if whether you're a positive person or a negative person, the language you use is completely different, right? In fact, when I was learning the English language, I quickly discovered that each word has some kind of a meaning attached to it. Because if it didn't have any kind of meaning, we wouldn't know what that thing is. So, for instance, like this pen has a meaning attached to it, right? Means
Yeah.
that it's a device for writing. So let's look at the word mindset. The word mindset is put together by two different words. First word is mind, second word is set. So we mindset. So the whole entire time what we're doing is basically keep saying about our mind being set. And now we try to change it. We try to fix it. So that's part one that I think is kind of, not that's kind of BS part of it. Because think about it this way. What we're really doing in life, we're mind shifting. If you really think about it, we're shifting our minds all the time. Like if I ask you right now, hey, what did you eat for breakfast today?
Me, nothing.
Nothing. All right. But let's say, maybe you had eggs, right? So you start thinking about eggs, and maybe you had bacon, you start thinking about bacon, right? And then, I ask you, hey, so what did you do at lunch today? And you start thinking about something else, right? So did
Yeah.
you change your mindset or you just shift your thinking from one thing to another?
You just shifted.
You just shifted your thinking, right? By the way, for those listening, I said the word shift. Okay. I've been blamed for saying some other word, and that's not what I am saying. Okay.
That
So
accent, huh?
that accent, yeah, gotta love the accent. So there's the mind shift. The other aspect is this: the whole personal development space keeps talking about us changing ourselves, fixing ourselves. Like there is something wrong with us. There is something that, we need to change because this doesn't work. Now, here is the problem that I have with that. When you were born and when you were, let's say, 3, 4, 5 years old, if you can think all the way back then, maybe you know a kid who's 3, 4, 5 years old. Is that kid fearful or is he more like fearless? Is he unstoppable? Is he, open? Is he, introvert or extrovert, or he just talks to anybody and everything? Like, think about it this way: before all the beliefs that we've learned over our course of life, what was the kid like? He was pretty unstoppable, right? In fact, when you ask little kids what you want to become when you grow up, what they tell you, maybe the president of the United States or something way extraordinary that they want to do because they don't have a whole bunch of different beliefs that they've been put on by them over the course of life. Then, as you start to grow and you start getting older, you start to learn from who? Other people, whether it's your parents, whether it's society, whether it's teachers, whether it's whatever it might be, of who you are and how you need to be in this world in order to what? Survive. Right?
Yep.
So what ends up happening, you start to learn different beliefs. And you learn those beliefs. So think about it this way. I learned my beliefs on how to be in life from one, my mom when I was little, two, my dad who was an alcoholic, which basically I barely have any recollections of hanging out with him. So there was very little there. Three, my uncle, my aunt, some teachers. And then I went on starting a business based on learning from these five people. None of them had a business, right? And what ended up happening, we start to think that this is who we are. And what I talk about, like in the book that I wrote, is we're trying to fix a version of ourselves that the world told us how we need to be at certain point in our life. And the truth is, if we just get back to our true authentic self, the way we were here when we ended up coming here, we become unstoppable. We're not fearful about life because we let go of all those different beliefs, like this whole people pleaser I talked to you about. That was a learned thing. I don't know if you ever heard about, you know, like when you're born. Do you know how many fears we have when we're born?
Probably not too many at all.
We have two fears that we're born with. And those are loud noises. You ever see a little kid be scared
Yeah.
of loud noises? They freak out. And the second one is being dropped. That's why you see a kid like holding onto the finger or whatever it might be, right? And they kind of like freak out when they look like they're going to be rolling off bed or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
Big things, especially like think about when you're born, you get like plop, you come out, right? So no wonder you're worried about being dropped, right? But those are the two fears. So what happened to all those other fears? You learn them. So what does that tell you? That tells you that at some point you were not fearful about things in life that you are fearful of them now. So when you start to let go of some of those fears and this persona that we've been kind of learned in order to survive, not thrive, then all of a sudden you start to be able to rock out in life. And that's
Yeah.
what I do with a lot of my clients.
That's awesome. You wrote the book Authentic Self Rebirth. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the book, and here's I'll actually show you the cover looks like this. In fact, if you look at the cover, there's a big white area here. There's in small letters underneath the line that says write your own name. So this is the first book I think ever that I know that you can actually write your own name on the book. So in your case, it would be Ryan's Authentic Self Rebirth. I want people to own it. Like this is my manual for my own rebirth. And by the way, I said rebirth, like being reborn. A lot of people can understand me. So, note to self: next time you create a title for a book, make sure that the words that you say actually can be understandable. Okay, my people. But anyway, Authentic Self Rebirth. Now, this book, like I said earlier, in 2011, I ended up getting divorced. And after that, I went into what I call my optimistic depression. And I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but on the outside, I was like very optimistic. And I was very like, if somebody asked me what's wrong, I'm like, I'm good. Everything's good. Things are good. But deep down inside, I was depressed. And during that time, the question that kept popping up over and over and over again is like, what the heck is wrong with me? And because I kept asking this question, that was like unanswerable question for me. And in order to get out of that, call it stinking thinking, and go through being more of who I am today, I went through this framework that I basically developed this framework in this book and get back to my true authentic self. I had to let go of a lot of those limiting beliefs, shedding all those different, forgiveness and all kinds of different things. And that's what this book is. And the book is written in like there is chapters in here, there's exercises in here. I have videos that are attached to it. So if you go into certain pages on the book, there are QR codes. Like for instance here, where you can actually scan and watch videos that help you to get back to your true authentic self. Because when you do that, I think you become unstoppable. And I've seen this not only for myself, but other people in my life. And I've seen in the last couple of years that a lot of people are dealing with stuff, that there is uncertainty in life, people feeling like something is off, something's missing for them. And I figure I need to write this book to help people out.
Yeah. What was probably your biggest challenge you faced while you were writing it?
Huh. Well, English is not my first language, so that's number one. Okay. But I'm a talker, as you can tell. I'm not a writer. I have never written. In fact, when I was in school, if I had to write a paper, it was like pulling teeth for me. I hated it. And I wrote a 43,000 word book. That's the biggest challenge about it. But the way I ended up attacking it is like one day at a time, one day at a time, one page at a time. And I ended up writing it. And that was probably the biggest challenge. Like not only the writing of it, but the English. Obviously, everything's perfectly written, and there you can
Yeah.
understand it. But Like I said, I'm a talker, not a writer.
Yeah. So basically, you chunked it down for your own mind, so you could, get to the finish line.
Well, yeah, kind of I did, and I wrote it like to an 8-year-old. Like a 10-year-old can go through this book and understand what's in there. It's a very simple language. I don't use a lot of big words, as you notice in the podcast. I don't use a lot of big words
Yeah.
because I don't like to complexify things. But yeah, but that's how I chunked it down, and it's like a sequential thing, and you can do it through a weekend. Like I have people who read this whole entire book in a weekend, or you can do it over a course of time, few weeks.
Awesome. How were you able to come bounce back from divorce and the darkness you faced to come back stronger?
Well, the one thing I will tell you this, and we talked about God earlier, right? Is I think when we go through these valleys, through these dark times, they are there to help you. They're there to teach you lessons. They're there to make you stronger. Because every single time I look back in my life, and every single time when there was a tough time for me, I came back a lot stronger. I grew a lot more. Those are the periods where you grow tremendously, but you have to be open to it. Most people will tend to resist that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For the longest time, the first, I would say, year or so after my divorce, I kept resisting it, meaning like didn't want to deal with it. I would, um, not not deal with it basically. But once I stopped resisting it and I stopped, what are you trying to teach me? You know, asking myself that. And then this period, I think I actually reconnected with God a lot more. I went back and I started reading a lot more, in the Bible. And I started reading in fact, with the first book that I went in, there was Book of Proverbs. Because for me, I was like, this is like secrets to success, right? Like those little bits of secrets to success. So I started going looking into that, and I think those are the things that helped me get out of this thinking, and then got back to me to be able to write this book today.
Yeah. What was one moment where you thought it was a breakdown, but God meant it for a breakthrough?
Oh man, well, I will tell you this. When I was 8 years old, and I wrote it in the book, in the first chapter of my book, I was 8 years old, and we were sleeping at the middle of the night. And my dad came home. He was drunk, and he started fighting with my mom because he wanted money to go back to the bar. And they started fighting like really bad, to literally start physically fighting. So I jumped on him. He throws me off the bed, off his shoulders. So I started panicking. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the frying pan, and I got up on the couch, like the arm of a couch, stood behind him, and hit him over the head with a frying pan. And in that moment, he fell to the ground and he passed out. And I made the decision that moment that's like, I will never be like you because I don't like how you are now, and I will make sure that people like me. For me, that was that moment. That was one of the worst moments in my life for the very, 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 very long time, because you can see why, right? In fact, after
Yeah.
that, I had to run to the police station and call the cops, get the cops to, because we didn't have phones back then. So I literally 3 in the morning, I would run to the police station to come and get my dad, kind of a thing. They arrested him, and next morning they released him. I was a little worried what he's going to do after that to me, right? Kind of a thing. But that looked like a really horrible moment for me in my life. Now I will tell you this: that moment was one of the most powerful, most impactful moments in my entire life, because if it wasn't for that moment, guess what? I wouldn't be here talking to you right now, because I can connect so many different moments in my entire life that basically shows me how I ended up being here, being a coach, helping other people. There's so many situations where I have people, business owners, come to me and come to find out their marriages are on the brink of divorce. And I actually end up helping them save their marriage. I wonder why. Why did that happen to me back then? Why did I get divorced in 2011? All those different things. So if you look back into your life, you'll probably see so many different instances like that. What you thought was a breakdown was actually a blessing. It was a blessing in disguise. You know what I mean? So, I could go on and on so many different things, but that's just one of them.
Yeah, I can completely relate to what you're saying too, because like I've noticed, like looking back at my own life, like, man, why did I ever go through that stuff? And it's like
Mhm.
now I'm realizing, well, you went through that stuff because you're helping people in that same area. And I
Yeah,
had to take you through all that darkness. And I tell everybody, he took me through all that darkness to humble me so he could raise me up to be stronger.
exactly. Think about it this way. So we talked about Bible a little bit. Peter, right? When he denied Jesus 3 times, I think that had to happen. This is just my interpretation, but I think he had to have denied Jesus 3 times in order for him to do what he would do afterwards.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's ironic that my
And
name is
like
Peter.
it's crazy when you think about some of the stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
like even like Job, like people hear people complaining about what they've been through, and it's like, you look at Job.
Oh
He's
yeah,
been through way worse than any of us probably will ever have to go through.
yeah. Have you ever read the book A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl?
No.
Check out that book, and
What's it called?
listeners, Man's Search for Meaning by a guy named Viktor Frankl. Frankl. This gentleman was in a concentration camp during the World War II. And in two parts of this book, the first part basically talks about his experiences in the concentration camp. So when I first read this book, I thought I had it bad because I was reading it, soon after my divorce. And I thought my life was horrible. And when I read this book, I was like, wow, I am nowhere near too bad how this guy had. I mean, it is insane what he details in that book. And the second part, basically, he tells people, obviously, since he wrote the book, he survived it. A spoiler alert, right? But he tells people how was he able to survive it. And that is one of the most powerful books that I've read when it comes to this, going through the fire. This guy literally went through the fire. I mean, he would be a perfect guest for if he was still alive today.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Everybody's got their own crosses, and we're designed for those challenges. Like your challenges, I probably wouldn't be able to handle some of your challenges, just like you wouldn't be able to handle some of mine because we were designed for those specifically, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I will tell you this, I've been coaching for the last, 10 years now, deal with thousands of different people. We speak on stages. I probably talk about over 100 different stages now, coaching people and things like that. One thing I know about humans, we are more resilient than we give ourselves credit to.
Yeah.
I think we are more powerful than we give ourselves credit to. And, even probably heard of stories where, let's say, a mom lifts the car off of the kid when there was an accident, right? How does a mom have so much strength? Whether it's just a physical thing, but we are much more resilient. So if you're going through something tough right now, you're listening to this podcast, just see, like, is there a blessing somewhere in the skies here, right? Is there something that I am not seeing? Is there a lesson that I need to learn in this time? And I will tell you this, that season, because it is a season, will end at some point, and you're going to end up on the other side at some point. And there's a reason why you're going through it, because in the future, it's probably going to have something to do with that for you, what you're going to be end up doing in life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always tell people you're usually tested the most with the most challenges and setbacks right before the breakthrough.
Yep. That's when it seems the darkest. Think about it, like in the morning,
Yeah.
right? Right before the sun comes out, it's really dark.
Yep. Exactly. How important is it to have a why when looking for success? And how can someone find theirs?
Well, I think the why is like this juice that gets you going, especially during those tough times. If you don't have a strong why, life will basically knock you off your course. So having a strong why, like reason why you're doing something, it's, I think, more important than having a goal. That we basically we were taught to create goals, but having a strong why you're doing this, why you're going after this, I think is super duper important. The easy way of doing it, I learned this from Toyota, that created this framework. When they go and ask the reason why 5 6 different times. So let's say you ask yourself, you want to go to the gym. right? I actually did that, develop myself for that. I had a coach who was asking me those questions. So, why you want to go to the gym? And I answered, well, because I want to be healthy. Interesting. Why you want to be healthy? Why I want to be healthy because when I'm healthy, I can do a lot more stuff, in life. So, like what kind of stuff? Well, to walk around, to play and do, like my kids were young to be able to play with my kids. Why you want to walk, be able to play with kids? Well, because when I play with my kids, when they're older, I can actually play maybe with my grandkids. In fact, when I am, going and growing, my kids are older, I want to be at their weddings. And then my coach said, so why you want to be at the wedding? Well, because I'm a dad and my daughter is, probably wants somebody to walk her down the aisle. And then he goes, so if you keep going in this rate that you're going, guess what? She might be standing in the end of the line at the, when she's about to walk down the aisle without anybody standing next to her. And that was like a knife in my heart kind of a thing, the way he said it.
Yeah.
That became a strong why for me. And I will tell you this, from that point on, I started going to the gym religiously. So
Yeah.
that's how important it is.
I always found out too that placing your why, like why you're doing something, with something bigger than yourself, because like, hey, my why is going to be, I'm doing it for these other people in my life, instead of, hey, I'm doing this for myself, like makes you not want to quit,
Yeah.
Because we're human. We always look for that easy way out at times.
That's that survival instinct. Yeah.
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 It's like, oh, I can take it a little bit easier today. And then it becomes a habit. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Totally. I totally get it. I mean, this book, for instance, right? The reason why this book got completed is because I'm writing it for that one person on the other line. It's nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
If I made it about myself, I would probably quit a long time ago.
Yeah. That's what I think a lot of people need to understand when they're going through them hard times. Assign that why to somebody else. I'm doing this for somebody else because you don't want to let them down,
Yeah. That's, yeah.
especially somebody you truly care about.
Oh, yeah. Especially someone, yeah, that's close to you that you care about. Yeah. You're right on that.
What's one belief people carry that silently sabotage their life or business?
Well, here's one that just popped into my head. One belief: I have to do it myself, or nobody can do it as good as me. That's pretty much almost the same kind of a belief, but it's somewhere around there. I carried that belief for a very long time because I used to watch my uncle build everything himself, and I, loved my uncle, and he was amazing, and he raised me. So doing myself, nobody can do it as good as me. That little thing will sabotage you in so many different areas of life. Guess what? You can't be married by yourself. You gotta have another person in that marriage, right?
Then
Um,
you end up micromanaging everything.
oh yeah, in the business you micromanage everything, and then you do everything, and you end up working 80, 90 hours a week, and you can't grow.
Yeah.
Then one thing I've learned, in order for you to be successful in life, this vision thing that I told you about earlier, it's a we business, WE business, not a me business. It's impossible well, it's not impossible, but it's 100 times harder to do it myself than do it with other people. So I have to go and get other people into my vision and empower them to help me do this vision, hire people, you know. I've done that many times now.
Yeah. And you're also not the best at everything anyways. So
Oh no, I don't know. I mean, I can't even speak right. Hello.
that's funny. How can people get a hold of you?
Well, they can go to polishpeter.com. That's my website. That's my branding website. And obviously the book, they can go to the book. It's myauthenticrebirth.com. And there are all kinds of bonuses they can pick up with this book if they go invest it, or can pick it up on, anywhere that books are available, Amazon, but in Barnes and Noble, anywhere. And I share a lot of different little videos like this on Instagram. And the Instagram is called Authentic Self Rebirth. So they can look up for that Instagram and they can find me there.
Awesome. And I'll also put that in the show notes for anybody, so anybody can get a hold of you too.
Thank you.
Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about?
No, I think we covered it pretty much, man. I think you've answered some really good questions. I'll say one last thing to the listener. Never, ever, 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 ever. Did I say ever? Give up. Never
Love
give
it.
up.
All right. Final question. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity?
Well, like I said, overcoming adversity. I've learned to embody this belief, and that is this: life happens for me, not to me. Life happens for me. Life happens for me. Life happens for me, not to me. So when you are going through the fire, going through adversity, we tend to make it about ourselves, right? Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? And what I've discovered over my course of my life is life happens for me, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So when you start looking about life happens for me, you start looking, how is this adversity happening for me? What's in the lesson in there? And you start to find those lessons. You start to take different actions and you start to get yourself out of that adversity kind of thing. But life happens for me, not to me. Take that on. It's not an easy one. It's a very simple belief, not an easy belief, but a simple belief. And you take that on, you see how life starts shifting for you.
Yep. Simple but hard.
That's right.
Great advice. Well, Peter, it was been a pleasure having you on here today. Getting great insight from you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you having me on here. It was great to have you be on here.
Yeah. Well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is go through the fire.